India's financial capital, Mumbai, often called the city that never sleeps, has once again been brought to a grinding halt by the fury of monsoon rains. Over the past 4 days, the city has been pounded by an extraordinary 800 millimeters of rainfall, according to the India Meteorological Department, well above the average precipitation normally expected in August. As a result, the lives of more than 12 million residents have been disrupted, with many areas submerged in waste, deep water. Roads have turned into rivers, sewers have overflowed, and the city's already strained infrastructure has collapsed under the pressure of incessant downpours. Trains, the lifeline of Mumbai and relied upon daily by millions, have faced hours-long delays with passengers stranded on overcrowded platforms. Flight operations have also been severely affected, with more than 50 flights cancelled in the past few days. In one alarming incident, nearly 600 passengers had to be rescued from a monorail train that stopped mid-journey due to overcrowding. At least 23 people were treated for suffocation as air conditioning systems shut down, forcing authorities to deploy fire brigades and cranes for rescue. Schools and colleges have remained closed, while more than 350 residents from low-lying areas have been evacuated to temporary shelters. The human cost of the disaster has been tragic. At least 21 people have lost their lives across Maharashtra state in rain-related accidents such as building collapses, electrocution, and flooding. Citizens have taken to social media to express anger over recurring failures of urban planning and civic preparedness. Opposition leaders have strongly criticized the government, alleging zero planning, despite the red alert issued by the weather department. The flooding of the city's airport and newly developed areas has raised questions about the effectiveness of recent infrastructure projects. Experts point out that while Mumbai has invested heavily in modern infrastructure such as metro systems, coastal roads, and sea bridges, it has lagged in upgrading its outdated drainage and sewage systems. The result is a city that looks modern on the surface but remains deeply vulnerable to climate shocks. With the effects of climate change intensifying, extreme weather events like these are expected to become more frequent and devastating. The story of Mumbai's current crisis is not only about heavy rainfall, but also about resilience, governance, and planning. It reflects broader challenges faced by India's rapidly urbanizing cities, where unchecked growth, inadequate drainage, and weak disaster preparedness leave millions vulnerable each year. Today's rainfall crisis, therefore, is not just an act of nature, it is a wake-up call for urgent reform and climate-resilient urban planning. The first and most evident dimension of this crisis is the collapse of Mumbai's urban infrastructure under the weight of torrential rains. Despite boasting projects worth billions of rupees, from metro corridors to coastal roads, the city's most fundamental systems, drainage and sewage, remain woefully inadequate. The rainfall of 800 millimeters in just 4 days overwhelmed the outdated British-era drainage system, much of which has not seen significant upgrades in over a century. This highlights a stark imbalance. While governments focus on flashy, high-visibility projects, critical but less glamorous infrastructure often remains neglected. The flooding of the airport and newly developed roads has exposed the shortcomings of recent planning. Citizens are questioning why new projects, promoted as symbols of progress, failed during their first real test of extreme weather. Opposition parties have described this as an absolute collapse of governance, echoing the sentiments of frustrated citizens who took to social media to express outrage. Moreover, garbage flowing out of choked sewers worsened the crisis, raising concerns about waste management systems. Experts have long warned that without comprehensive investment in drainage and stormwater management, Mumbai will continue to suffer annual monsoon paralysis. The lesson here is that urban resilience requires not only large-scale projects, but also consistent attention to basic civic necessities. As climate change increases the frequency of extreme rainfall, upgrading these systems is no longer optional. It is essential for the survival of cities like Mumbai. The second keynote centers on the humanitarian toll of the disaster. More than 12 million people have been affected by the rains in Mumbai, with lives thrown into chaos. Families have been displaced, students unable to attend school, and thousands stranded at stations and airports. Over 350 people were evacuated from low-lying areas, highlighting the vulnerabilities of informal settlements and slums where millions of the city's residents live. The rescue of nearly 600 passengers from the stranded monorail was a stark reminder of how human lives are endangered by overcrowded and undermaintained systems. With 23 passengers treated for suffocation, the incident underscored the lack of safety protocols in public transport during emergencies. For many daily wage workers, the disruption of trains meant lost income and food insecurity, while others faced dangerous journeys through waste, deep water to reach their workplaces. Rain-related accidents claimed at least 21 lives in Maharashtra, adding a tragic dimension to the crisis. Each year, countless families lose loved ones during the monsoon, yet long-term solutions remain elusive. Beyond fatalities, there are invisible consequences: waterborne diseases, psychological stress, and financial hardships. When a megacity like Mumbai struggles with basic safety during seasonal rains, it raises pressing questions about equity and the right to safe living conditions in urban India. This crisis reminds us that urban disasters are not merely about flooded roads. They are about disrupted livelihoods, broken education cycles, and human suffering. The resilience of Mumbai's people is remarkable, but resilience should not become an excuse for systemic negligence. Citizens deserve safety and security, not just survival. The third keynote lies in governance and accountability. The rains have once again ignited a political debate in Maharashtra. Opposition leaders, including Aditya Thackeray, accused the government of zero planning, despite weather warnings. He cited the flooding of the airport and emergence of new waterlogging zones as evidence of official negligence. These criticisms resonate with citizens who see a recurring cycle of promises before the monsoon and failures during it. Government agencies often blame unprecedented rainfall, yet meteorological data shows that extreme rainfall events have been rising steadily over the last decade. The failure, therefore, lies not in prediction but in preparation. The issuance of a red alert should have triggered preemptive evacuations, drainage clearances, and transport safety protocols. Instead, chaos unfolded across the city, leaving citizens stranded and helpless. Moreover, the incident of the overcrowded monorail demonstrates not just poor maintenance, but also inadequate crowd management and crisis response. Opposition lawmakers have rightly argued that urban safety requires foresight, not reactive measures. Governance is not merely about building infrastructure, but ensuring it functions during crises. Accountability must extend beyond political blame games. City authorities, municipal corporations, and state governments share collective responsibility. Unless governance structures become proactive, transparent, and accountable, Mumbai will remain trapped in an endless cycle of monsoon disasters. Citizens deserve more than excuses. They deserve a city that is prepared. Finally, the crisis in Mumbai cannot be seen in isolation from the larger context of climate change. Scientists and meteorologists have repeatedly warned that South Asia will face increasingly severe and erratic monsoon patterns due to rising global temperatures. The 800 millimeters of rainfall Mumbai received in just 4 days is part of this emerging trend of concentrated extreme weather events. The problem is compounded by rapid urbanization and shrinking natural drainage systems. Wetlands, mangroves, and open spaces that once absorbed floodwaters have been steadily encroached upon for construction. This ecological imbalance magnifies the impact of heavy rainfall, turning natural water flow into urban flooding. Without integrating environmental protection into urban planning, Mumbai will remain vulnerable year after year. The way forward requires bold, climate-resilient planning, investment in modern drainage networks, flood warning systems, and disaster preparedness drills must be prioritized. Equally important is enforcing strict regulation against construction on floodplains and ecologically sensitive zones. Cities like Tokyo and Singapore have shown that resilient urban planning can significantly reduce flood risks even in densely populated areas. Mumbai's crisis is, therefore, a call to rethink how India prepares its cities for the realities of climate change. The choice is stark: continue patchwork responses and endure annual paralysis, or embrace holistic, climate-smart planning that protects both infrastructure and human lives. This monsoon should serve not just as a disaster, but as a turning point for urban India's future.